Hello, everyone. Welcome to this new webinar. Today, we're here with Ruby Powers, immigration attorney from Powers Law Group. And today, we're going to talk to you about the Freedom of Information Act, also known as FOIA. Ruby, well, she is an immigration attorney licensed since 2008, and she founded the firm in 2009. So, Ruby, the word is yours.
Thank you, Maria. So Freedom of Information Act request, this is sort of like some secret weapon, if you will. This is a way to get a copy of important documents from the government. And really, it takes a lot to knowing how to get what you need. A lot of people think that we can just like go on some back end and like Google documents. No, it does not work like that. I wish it super worked like that, but it doesn't. And so one of the morals of the stories is keep a copy of whatever you've ever sent to the government if it's super important, because it could take you months, if not years, to get a copy of it again, if ever it was an important matter, which it can be very frequently. So a Freedom of Information Act request is a way to ask for a copy of a file or parts of a file or some document from the government, the FBI, and there's different areas. And then there's the FBI background check, which is a nice tool, and you send to the FBI with your fingerprints. And then we're going to go into like where you can get which documents from which agency. And I'm specifically talking about immigration and in this realm, but you could do FOIAs for any different agency, and there's different ways to do it. So since 1967, it's provided the public the right to request access to records, and federal agencies are required to disclose information requested under FOIA unless it falls under one of the 9 exemptions, which we will briefly go over. So USCIS. So actually, USCIS was created back in 2003 under the Department of Homeland Security. So it's really not that old, if you will, 21 years old at the time of recording. So some things are in different places you wouldn't think. An A file, so that's the immigrant file from previous applications and corresponds to and from USCIS, including submissions and decisions, are generally with USCIS. Immigration, deportation, detention records prior to 2000 are generally with USCIS, so that's important to note. What we've seen is maybe the processing time 6 to 9 months. This can vary. It can vary, but that's what we've seen, and I'm hoping that it gets faster. But the name, your A number, the date of birth, and a valid photo ID are needed. So what USCIS, that would be helpful if you submitted an I-130 for 245I purposes and you're trying to get a copy of it. Those types of things, or you submitted a copy but you didn't keep one for yourself and you have an interview coming up, that type of thing. Now, EOIR, Executive Office of Immigration Review, this one has court orders, charging documents, court decisions. Now, this one can be done different ways. There's ways to request it from the court themselves. There's a way to request it from EOIR. And so generally, depending on what you're needing, there's different ways. If a person has what we call like an ECAS, an online file, then usually once you're the attorney of record can see the entire file. So that's actually really good. But if it's a paper file, or you're not the attorney of record, you can't see it yet. Those are some other things to consider. So CBP, this was for apprehensions and detentions at the border, interactions with CBP at the border or inside US. This can help with I-94 records, but you can actually get a lot of things from the electronic I-94 site on CBP as well. That's been more robust over the last several years. It can also tell you entries and exits, voluntary return records, expedited removal orders. You do need the name and the time of entry and date of birth used at the time of entry, and the A number ideally. So ICE, interactions with ICE, CVIS records, arrest records for I-213, bond request. And this one can vary in terms of processing times, but name, A number, you see the theme. There's a name, A number, date of birth, and usually an ID would be necessary. There's this other one that is important. It's called the Office of Biometrics Identity Management. And you do need to send a card that has your fingerprints on it. What's good about this one is if any time you might have had a different name used for your identity, then this will help tie the name and the entity, the interaction with your fingerprints. Because, for example, a CBP record, is just with name and date of birth and does not tie to fingerprints. But OBIM can help pull things together tied to fingerprints. And really, what I've noticed is for records prior to 9/11, things are a little not as digitalized, a little wonky, if you will, and so for a non-legal term. And so it can take a little while to put things together. Now, I'll say this here because it's important. Just because you request something and you don't get something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It could still exist, and I would highly suggest doing an appeal. And that's why having an immigration attorney who knows what they're doing, and I've done a lot of FOIAs, is super important. The Department of State is another place. I've noticed these take a long time. You could find things like the visa applications, potentially passport applications. Um, but generally, this is the one I don't like doing that much because they can take a very long time. Now, FOIA exemptions include all these different ones here, but it's mostly for like national security, those types of things, or they're not allowed to provide that information. Side note, I've actually gone to some locations where they keep files, and I was shown a tour of how they decide whether it's an exemption or not, and it's quite fascinating. But they'll black out, redact information if they think that is one of those exemptions to provide. Now, an FBI background check, you need to have that little white card that has your fingerprints on it. What's good about that one is it can show you if there's any criminal records that still show up on your record. Sometimes you think it's expunged or dismissed, but it's still there. And so it also can show some interactions with immigration back in the day, which can be helpful. And sometimes it shows an A number, which can help you if you don't know your A number, and you can go later and look online to find out if there's anything that interacts with that, connects to that A number on immigration court. So generally, when we're doing these types of things, we're also trying to find um, information that can help us maybe do more FOIAs and get more information. One other thing FBI background checks show is that they mention if there's any tattoos, and that's another thing to note. In terms of criminal records, just briefly, those are important. That's not part of the FOIA conversation necessarily, but criminal records can be obtained in lots of different areas depending on where the crime happened. And that's also very important to be able to obtain to be evaluated. So that is a really quick nutshell of FOIAs. And if there's something I would just say is if you ever submit anything to the government, keep a copy and keep a copy until you become a citizen, or even if you become a citizen, keep a copy if you're going to petition for somebody. It takes a long time to get copies. The other reason why all this matters is consistency equals truth, and you want to be consistent with everything you say to these government agencies. And also, it's important to know that even if they don't show something, it still could exist and you might need to appeal. So these are just some little tricks from having done FOIAs for many years. And you can reach us on all these different platforms from Twitter or X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We have a newsletter that goes out in English and Spanish every other week. And we have 4 full-time attorneys and some other attorneys available as well. So we are available to speak in Spanish, English, Ukrainian, Russian, Turkish, lots of fun stuff. And Maria has us organized with lots of wonderful webinars for the rest of the month, including what you need to know about F1 visas. But all of these are being recorded in English and Spanish. Feel free to share with someone you know that could benefit from all this material, and we want to be a resource for you here at Powers Law Group. Again, this is Ruby Powers with Powers Law Group. Please reach out to us, and we will be available for you in the future. Thank you.